Today let us use ScriptRunner to create a system where we can get approvals. Now, of course, for doing this, we'll be using one example. Let us say you're using Jira where you have an issue type with a workflow. Now, this workflow is of course a very simple workflow, and workflows should be simple in my opinion. Don't overcomplicate your workflows. But anyways, don't worry too much about the workflow itself, but try to focus on the approval part. Now, let us say you have a new feature that you want to go through some approval. And right now, this is the workflow where you have these 4 states open, where you will open a new feature request. When you create a new feature request, then it will go through a state where someone will review it, and after reviewing you may want to release it directly, and once it is released, once you're happy with the release, you can finally make the issue status as done by of course moving it to done status. Now the requirement is to basically have some kind of approval in between in review and release status. Now there are few ways of doing it, I think there are a few ways of doing it, but I'll focus on the one which I think is very efficient, and it doesn't require creation of a new state. Now, one obvious way of doing it is, of course, to create a new status like approve. So after you have done your analysis or your in review, you can create a status like approval or whatever you want to call it, some status in between, and you can consider that particular status as let us say a step where you will send this issue to someone to review, to basically give their feedback and either approve or reject it. And of course you can modify this workflow. When you have rejection, you can go back to the previous state. When you have approval received, you can go further. Now, right now, of course, we do have this status called in review, and then we can go to release. So let us do something with the in review status, and let us see how we can achieve this. Now, for doing this, what I'll do, I'll modify the workflow first. So let us go to the project settings, and this particular workflow is not really shared by any other project, so I'm not really worried too much about modifying it. I will modify it straight away. And but you should be careful in real life when you are doing this on actual Jira instance where people are using Jira. Your slight change can affect other projects and teams. So what I'll do, I'll take a look at this workflow, and in review is already quite clear. Like we are reviewing something, but we want to have some kind of proper approval where you can't proceed further unless you get the approval. So what I'll do, I'll create a status from in review status back to in review. So basically you can create a transition from one state to another state, but at the same time there is also a transition which is like a loop, and basically this is like a self transition. Now the good thing is that we can do something in between, something that you want to do in between, you can do that. Although this is like a transition which is nothing but a loop that will appear like a loop in your workflow. Now this is all good. Now what will happen if you publish this workflow? When the user moves the issue from open state to in review state, and while you are at in review state, the user will see 2 buttons on top. One is approve and the other one is release. But we want to basically stop the user from going forward unless the approval is received. Now, how do we do this? How do we basically make sure that we have some way to capture whether the person has or the approver has been through this loop? Because we want the user to go through this loop first before going forward. Now for doing this, what I'll do, I'll create a custom field in Jira, and I'll probably name that custom field as, you can use any name, but for sake of simplicity, we'll create a custom field called as maybe approved, and it can have two values, yes or no, maybe. I think that makes sense. So let us create a field. You can create a field which is like a checkbox, I believe. But you can also create maybe a select list, up to you. So let us create approved, and we can have options like yes or maybe no. So I think this is fine. We can have if it is checked, then it means we got the approval. We can also create a select list. For the timing, let us just create a checkbox and let us see how it looks like. And we'll add it on a screen in the project. Now the project that I'm using, let me show you the project itself. So the project that I'm using is basic. The name of the project is basic, and we are using new feature. So let us first verify the screen scheme, issue type screen scheme used or mapped to or basically the issue type, basically the screen scheme used by the issue type, which is new feature. And right now, of course, we are using this BAS software development default issue screen. Now, what I want you to do is I want to basically, I mean, in reality, you should not have this field on the edit screen, because people can simply modify the issue and they can edit the field and they can just check it, so it will be approved. But let us, for the time being, use the same screen which is used by create, edit, and view issue operations. So I'll add in reality, you should add this particular field approved to the view screen, which is this one, and have a different screen for edit. We can also modify the issue type screen this particular screen scheme and modify the issue type screen scheme, but let us keep it simple and straightforward. So I'll add it to the default issue screen here, and I'll update the screen. Now let us go back to the workflow. So what I want to first do is I want to avoid the user. I want to stop the user from going forward to release unless the approval has been received, unless the approved field has yes value. So what I'll do, I'll add a condition, because if the condition is false, this transition won't appear. And for adding a condition, I'll use maybe ScriptRunner. Why not? You can do a lot of wonderful things with ScriptRunner. So let us add the condition, and I'll add a simple scripted condition. The good thing is that you have the option here to take a look at some snippets. So I'll use this snippet here. So I'll type in the field name, which is approved, and the value is, of course, yes. So the condition is that if it is yes, only then allow the transition to appear on the issue. And let us click on the update, and we have a condition on in review to release status. Let us go back to the workflow, and this part is done. Now what I want to do is, so basically you can go to this status called in review, and when you are in review state, you will see this transition, only this transition approved, not the release transition, because at this stage the approved field has no value. It is not yes. But the moment you do this transition, the moment you click on approve, you want the field value to be set to yes, so that you can proceed further. You can basically you can basically allow the user to release it. And for doing that, So let us add the condition in just a moment. Let us add this post function in just a moment. Let me just publish the workflow. Let us first test. Let us do it in an iterative way. We have done some changes to the workflow. Let us first test how it looks like. So I'll probably open my issue in a separate window, the same new feature, where it is in, I believe, the first, it is in to-do state, I believe, or the first initial state, open. And if I look at the workflow, we can see here that the transition is, the only available option is review, which is fine. Once you click on it, you can hopefully see that we have this working. We don't really see the release button, release option here, because we first have to approve. Now we can definitely click on the approve button on top, but it won't do anything because because we have a condition for the next transition, and the next transition will only appear once you set the value of approved field to yes. So let us try if it works. So I'll change it to yes, and if I click on the update, we don't really see the option here. So something is wrong. I think the value is not really being checked properly. So let us fix this. Let us go to the workflow again. So I'll click on the workflow. I'll modify the edit workflow, and I'll take a look at the release condition. So something is wrong with the condition, which is fine. So let us take a look at this. So we don't really have any logging, but we can definitely modify this script. So I think we need to slightly modify this code. So because the return of CF values approved, I believe, will be a list. So I guess we can do something like this. We can maybe do yes in CF values approved started value. So if we get any yes in the custom field, then it will allow. So let us preview this, and this is now evaluating to true, which is always good to know. We can modify this to false. We can just uncheck it, and let us see if we get here false. So now it is false. So I think this is now fine. So let us update this, and let us publish the workflow. So I guess we now have one piece working. If we now go back to the issue, and if we maybe refresh this, so the approve field has no yes value checked. So that is why we can't proceed further. But if I click on the edit, and if I now select yes here, hopefully we will get one more button on top called release. Now this is all good, but what we really want to do is, if we really want to update this value approved to yes automatically, and that can be done using the post function. So the moment you approve the issue, so when you click on the approve button, you can also set the field value. So let us do that. And for doing that, let us take a look at the workflow first. So I'll modify the workflow, and for doing some of these things, of course, I'm using a ScriptRunner, but there are other apps that you can use for doing these things. The good thing about ScriptRunner is that it has different use cases, and of course, with the help of post functions, workflows, and validators, you can really do some customizations when it comes to maybe adding a custom script here with more logic than just one line of code. So let us click on the approve transition and click on the post function. And this was the second piece of work that we wanted to do, to update the field value. Now for doing this, we do have some options. If you are, let us say, wondering, can we use update issue field? Let us see if we can. So there is a post function, which is basically what you get when you have Jira without any app. So there is no option here to update the custom field, you can only update the system fields, which is fine. We have ScriptRunner, so we'll use ScriptRunner. So let us click on the add post function, and let us select the option here, script post function, and click on add button. So let us see what all we can do here. We can do, I believe, a lot of things, and there are plenty of examples. Like you can always write custom script post function. You can do few things like add current user as watcher. There are different things. I'm just trying to figure out a way to update a field. Can we do it? Can we do it using one of these options? Now we'll add a script here, and this script is slightly, it's not really one line, because when you're working with a custom field where you have, let us say, different options, it is not a text field, it is a checklist, and you can have multiple options. You have to basically use options manager. Now this script is very similar to the one that I have shared earlier in one of my previous video, but I'll anyways share this script as well. We don't really have to worry about the issue object because we already have issue here. And usually if you're working with, let us say, ScriptRunner, you want to run this on the console, you can always take a look at how to work with issues by declaring your own issue. And by the way, if you want to know how to work with options, you can also take a look at the script here on this community post, where you have the information about updating a custom field type checkbox through ScriptRunner. So basically I'm using the script here. Mostly it is more or less the same script, but I just added some conditions on top to basically check whether the issue is the issue object is relevant or not. But this is of course the script that you can, this is the post that you can refer to. I'll share the link of this particular post. Now if you look at the code here, I'm just setting the value to yes, and I'll of course update the post function. And when you update the post function, you can simply publish it, and after publishing the post, after publishing the workflow, you can then go back to the issue and verify. Now right now we have the status in review and we have to approve it. You can click on the button, and the moment you click on the button, if the post function is working, then we'll have the approved custom field set to yes, and then we can proceed further. So if you click on the button, now you have the approved set to yes. And by the way, in real case, in real world scenario, remove the approved field from the edit screen. Otherwise, you can just modify. Users can just modify this. You don't really want users to modify this from the screen. You want the script to, or the post function to modify this particular field. Now, this is all good. We can now proceed further. There is also one more improvement that you can do, and that is if you, let us say, because right now it doesn't really make any sense to show the approved transition, because we have already approved this particular new feature for release. Now we can hide it. Now for hiding it, it is nothing but a transition that you want to hide on a condition where if the approved is set to yes, then don't display. So we just have to add one more condition. Let us try if we can do that. So if we go to the workflow again, and if we look at the previous condition that we added on release transition, I'll just show you how it looks like. So earlier we were using this condition here on the release transition. We want to simply do the same thing for our own approve transition. So I'll just copy it here so we don't have to type it again. It's nothing but one line, but anyways, let us copy this and go to the conditions for approve transition, add a new condition, and this time we want to add a condition. Of course, we are adding a scripted condition, and a simple scripted condition. And the condition is that if you think about it, so right now this will only display when the condition is true. So we don't really want this. We want to negate this. We basically want to simply change it to maybe not in. Let us try if this works. So it won't really work because this is not really a valid thing to do, but maybe you can change it to no, and maybe we can have two values in the field. Maybe you can have no, or maybe you can have yes and no. So this is something that you can do here. So if you change it to no, basically not really yes, we can now let us preview. If we preview this, let us see the outcome of this. So the outcome is false because it is not really yes. It is not really no, it is yes. If I change it to yes and preview again, now it is true. So let us change it to no. Maybe we can later on modify the field to have two values, yes and no. But even if you don't add no here in the field, it will still work because the condition will not be true. So let us approve this, publish it, and click on the publish button. And if you go back to the workflow and if you refresh the page, now we have the approve button gone. Now this looks all good to me. Let us create a new feature from the very beginning. One more feature and create, and let us take a look at the workflow first, and take a look at the workflow just to remind ourselves what we are doing. So from open state, we'll go to in review, then we'll approve it, then we'll release it. And we don't really want to show the approve transition once the approval has been given. So let us review, and now someone will approve the request, and we have a problem. We don't really see that button anymore. What is wrong? I have no idea. So the problem here, I believe, is that we are at in review state, but we can't go further, and we can't also see the approval option because we just added a condition. Let me just remove it. Let me just remove the condition first. Let us go to the diagram and click on the edit. So that is why you should always do these things on staging instance. So let me just think about it. Although the condition is working fine, we basically don't really want to add a condition at this stage. We want to show the transition. So how do we do it? How do we solve this problem? So basically the problem here is that we have to check whether, so we have to show the transition when it is not approved, but once it is approved, we don't have to show the transition. So we have to basically negate the yes. So what I'll do, I'll slightly modify this. I'll change it to something like this. Let us see if it works. So if we preview this, it is evaluating to true for BAS 1. For BAS 4, let me check. For BAS 4, maybe a different issue. It is evaluating to something else. Let me change it to approve, to basically yes, to validate whether this is still true or not. So right now we know that it is yes. So we have to basically do something like this. Value dot contains so it indeed has this value, yes. So we can do something like this, but we have to negate it. So we can probably change it to, we can probably uncheck it and go back and preview this again. So now we have, of course, a null pointer exception because there is nothing here in the field. So we have to fix this. Now, of course, we know that there is nothing in the field. The value is null, so we can't do contains on null value. But I can do something like this, question mark. So it will only look for yes when there is some value. And if you now preview it, it is now definitely working. But we have to negate the whole condition. So what we can do, we can add this exclamation sign, and hopefully this is now fine. So basically for BAS4, we know that the condition is working fine because we are basically checking if there is some value like yes, and we know that the value is not there, so the condition is now evaluating to true, so it should work. So if I update this particular condition and if I publish the workflow, hopefully I'm hoping it will work this time. So let us refresh this issue, and I guess now it is working. So we have the button called approve, and we can proceed further. Hopefully it will work now. And once you approve, yes, we don't really have that button appearing anymore. So I guess we have successfully implemented this very solid approval system using, of course, ScriptRunner for Jira and a few things like adding a transition to the same state. We could have, as I mentioned earlier, we could have added one extra transition, but I think if you're a Jira administrator, you should try not to create too many states, and you should make it very simple for the users and also for yourself to optimize the usage. You should try to reuse the existing statuses that you have, and this particular example of self-transition or a loop kind of a transition that you can add is basically for exactly this particular use case, adding some kind of approvals, or maybe you want to capture some information from the user, maybe using a transition screen. Only then you want to only then you want the issue to proceed further. So use these methods to make your workflows really solid. And do let me know if you like this slightly lengthy video, although I don't really create videos more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes long. But today I spent like half an hour, which is a bit unusual for me. But I wanted to spend some time, showing you how a typical Jira administrator would solve a problem and get into trouble and then fix the problem. So today, although I didn't really expect everything to be perfect from the beginning, I did write some scripts which didn't. I did write some scripts which worked, but not partially. But I just wanted to show you how I can fix, how I can troubleshoot, how not just me, but any Jira administrator or someone who is working with ScriptRunner would troubleshoot and basically reach a point where not only the script is working, but also you make sure you are testing it. You're making sure that whatever customizations you're doing using any method, you don't need to use ScriptRunner. I'm just using ScriptRunner for this particular example, but the whole idea here is to do any customizations on a test environment or maybe on a test project. Don't really do these things on production directly, because your single line of code or script can stop the users from transitioning the issues, like what happened today. We almost messed up. we basically added a condition that was not allowing us to proceed further. But of course, it was a quick fix. The whole idea here is to just test, and test, and also on a test environment, not really on production. So I hope you enjoyed watching today's video and you learned something new today. Thank you very much.